The most important thing said all media days, Greg Sankey said it within the first 5 minutes of the week.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zach Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Montgomery radio legend Darrell Dapprich with us all week long as we are live from SEC Media Days. Darrell, Greg Sankey, the SEC Commissioner, knocked it out of the park as he always does with his opening comments. But to me, he said the most important thing that I think will be said all week in just the first few minutes of his opening statement. He said, we are 16 strong. 16 is our today. 16 is our tomorrow. Remaining very consistent, steadfast even, about 16 teams is where the SEC is happy being right now.
It had a couple different messages to me. First of all, I think he wanted to set the tone that the 16 that is in the conference right now is who he's focused on, who he wants to worry about, and his eyes aren't wandering somewhere else. Mm-hmm. He's focusing on, it's like a marriage. You're focusing on who's in front of you. I'm not wandering. That question was asked, Zach, 3 times in a row in 3 different ways.
Sure.
And he was starting to get a little frustrated. Like, look, his comment that really struck me was, I'm not a recruiter. I don't recruit schools. You felt like that was a little bit of a dig at some other conferences. I agree. It is. But he feels like, this is what I took of it. He even said that there were other schools that have called him that he doesn't call them. So I think that the SEC is in a position of strength, and Sankey is in a position of strength that, yeah, they'll listen. They're not going to actively pursue, but right now they're focused on the 16, and that's it. They're not looking at expansion. Even when a young lady asked the question, okay, you say tomorrow, or tomorrow in the future, and he sighed and said, right now, it's the 16. We've got enough on our plate to worry about what's going to come in the future.
Which is, remains consistent with what he said every SEC Media Days since the news about Texas and Oklahoma broke several years ago. He was hounded with that question over and over and over again in Atlanta, over and over and over again last year in Nashville, and it's going to probably be that way for the foreseeable future, the way college football's landscape is still constantly changing. But we do forget that Texas and Oklahoma, them leaving the Big 12 and coming to the SEC, it's what started this entire process. The Big 10 going out and getting USC and UCLA, that was a reaction to what the SEC did. It just took a while. And so it feels like the SEC needs to respond to what's happening. But in reality, everything that's happened is reacting to the SEC. It just happened so long ago.
They were the trendsetters. They got the ball rolling. Mm-hmm. The Big 12 had to respond because they would have been a conference that would have been archaic.
Right.
The Pac-12 went away. You're hearing stuff about Florida State and Clemson. And what's interesting to me is, remember, Zach, when this whole thing broke, within a year, there was some serious smoke around Florida State and Clemson joining the conference. I think it was very, very telling to me. Somebody asked a great question. Why Dallas? Why Dallas in SEC Media Days? Why are you here? He said that they thought about coming here in 2018 because of the A&M factor and because of the alumni, the SEC alumni that is so prevalent in Dallas. So all that tells me is it's all tied about how he's always a step of everybody else and how they think and how they plan. But you make an excellent point. The SEC moved the first chess piece. After that, everybody followed suit. By survival, SEC doesn't have to do anything to survive.
Which goes to another quote that I wrote down from him. The Southeastern Conference were the only conference where the name still means something. And you're able to do that because you moved first. You went out and got Texas and Oklahoma because they fit in the Southeastern Conference. They fit in that branding. Now you look at what the Big Ten did. They're reacting. And so you've got Rutgers playing UCLA, which is ridiculous.
It is.
And then obviously with the Big 12, they've got everything. And also those teams don't really match the name because there's more than those. That's a higher number than,
Amen. That's the credibility thing that I think it goes to, is that the SEC still.
Totally.
The name it just carries so much weight. The Big Ten is no longer the Big Ten. The Big 12 has more teams. The ACC has Cal and Stanford. I mean, I'm not trying, but it's just the legitimacy of it. The SEC has never changed.
Mm-hmm.
The legitimacy and the logo means everything, where these other conferences have kind of sell their soul to a certain extent.
Yeah, props to SEC leadership and Commissioner Sankey. I mean, it really was the cherry on top of, wow, he did all of this. He did all of this the right way. And so, yeah, props to him. We kind of got to see that. We got to see that in his opening remarks at SEC Media Days. But, as far as, the expanded college football playoff, that was discussed. And I think the SEC kind of hinted at it, that they kind of saw that coming. And that was a big part of why Texas and Oklahoma would be more likely to leave the Big 12 and come to the SEC. But, I mean, you just think about all of these teams and all of these brands in the expanded college football playoff, and you think about a team like Auburn.
Yeah.
And it's like every team in this conference benefits from everything that's happened here, the first day at Media Days.
It's ironic. There's a really, really cool conflicting kind of double thing going on here. I think Auburn, and how this affects Auburn, and that's what our listeners and viewers want to know, is from a conference championship standpoint, it makes it more difficult. But from achieving a playoff berth, I think it makes it less difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Because without Texas and Oklahoma coming into the league, I don't think you go to a 12-team playoff. There are others, and I don't think Texas and Oklahoma jumps into the SEC if the playoff didn't expand to 12. That's my opinion. I think they would have stayed in the Big 12 to try to get that berth. Right now, with the playoff going to 12 teams, just an opinion, I think it's easier from the SEC conference to reach the 12-team playoff than it is to win the conference, because of 16 teams and because of the strength now that's so top-heavy.
Yeah, I mean, this will be a discussion all week, but it's like, okay, how many teams have a legit shot to make the CFP this year in the SEC? Georgia, sure. Alabama, sure. Ole Miss, sure. Missouri, sure. LSU, maybe. I'm not as high on them as most people are, but they've got a legitimate shot. And I mean, I would be surprised if they didn't have three of those teams in there at the end of the day.
I'll go further and say it wouldn't shock me if we see a college football playoff where 5 of the teams are from the SEC. That's the kind of strength and legitimacy and absolute stroke that this conference has.
That'd be wild.
So if you get 5, think about that. I mean, you've talked about it with Jay Crane and some other people. If you're a team in the SEC and you win 10 games, you're 10-2, even 9-3, you got a shot.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about Auburn's situation. I was talking about this with Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football. Be sure to make that your second listen of the day. But he and I were discussing, okay, if Auburn does go 9-3, and those losses are all on the road to top 10 teams at Bama, Georgia, and at Missouri, and you've beaten the ranked Oklahoma team, you've beaten a ranked, potentially ranked Kentucky team on the road, beating a ranked Texas A&M. Like, is that good enough? And I don't know if it's going to be good enough, but I do think it'll be close.
It puts you in the conversation.
Yes.
And at the end of the year, any team that was ahead of you, let's say you do that and you go 9-3, you're at 14, and some teams in front of you stumble, and those teams just happen to be from the Big 12 or ACC. Who do you think the college football committee is going to take? They're going to slide Auburn up because of the conference they're in.
Yeah, the conference you're in matters. We've learned that so much over the last 2 years, and Auburn's in the best conference that you could possibly be in. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, and I think that was a great reminder with Commissioner Sankey as he got things going here at SEC Media Days. Coming up, we talk with Jay Smith, host of Locked On Sooners. What does that Week 5 matchup look like from their perspective? Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die safe. Look, can you imagine buying a part for your car, truck, or SUV anywhere else other than eBay Motors? No. Makes me mad just thinking about it. If you need anything, whether it's LED lights, brake pads, I don't know the names of any other car parts, but they have 122 million of them. Doesn't matter what make or model year, they've got you covered. Head over to ebaymotors.com. It's the right parts, the right fit, the right prices, everything you need at ebaymotors.com. Thank you to eBay Motors for sponsoring Locked On Auburn. Jay Smith with Locked On Sooners hanging out with us. So we've been talking about the Week 5 matchup.
Oh, yeah.
All offseason. When Oklahoma takes their first road game in the SEC to Jordan-Hare Stadium, where we've seen some crazy things happen. So first off, welcome to the SEC. Second off, what's the Oklahoma mindset, do you think, coming into Auburn, coming into Jordan-Hare Stadium Week 5?
I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of excitement.
Sure.
One of the things that we're seeing, especially with Sooner fans, is that this is that 80,000 seat stadium, something that we haven't really seen outside of the Cotton Bowl.
Sure.
We've been there. Cotton Bowl, the big thing there is it's half and half. It's 40,000, 40,000. It's red, it's orange, it's split up. It's a massive experience. But at Jordan-Hare, we aren't used to going to places that large. I think the largest one we saw was BYU at 60-something thousand. We've been to Ohio State. We've been to Neyland Stadium. But now that it's in conference and it feels like it really means more, like the game really means more.
It just means more.
It's going to be an exciting time. Like, all Sooner fans are stoked about it. I think Oklahoma's, the biggest thing is going to be preparing for Hugh Freeze, right? We got to prepare for that type of coach. Good offensive guy, great setup. And he's recruiting his butt off right now. So, but outside of that, man, we're stoked about that first road trip in the SEC.
I've said all offseason that I think when you look at this matchup, the pressure is going to be on Oklahoma, because either you guys beat Tennessee at home the week before, and okay, great, Oklahoma is going to be maybe a top 10 team in that situation, and so you're on the road. Jordan-Hare Stadium's a tricky place to come in and visit when you're ranked, or you guys lose to Tennessee. And you think, oh my gosh, we've been waiting to go into the SEC for so long. Are we about to start 0-2? That would be terrible. Mm-hmm. I think the pressure's on Oklahoma. Is that a crazy thing to say?
No, it's 100% true, because coming into this conference, everybody's already doubting us, right? As if the history of Oklahoma hasn't existed. We're 100% doubted. So for us, we've got to figure out how to just keep our mindset focused on winning one game at a time. And that's always been what Brent Venables preaches. One game at a time. As long as you're focused on that, you usually do better. Yeah. Now we got to go in there, make sure we execute, make sure we're healthy, and then go out there and play. But yes, all the pressure is on us fully, because it's going to be the first one. It's going to be the one that's going to be magnified the most. Mm-hmm. Once we get that off our back, we'll have the first home game, we'll have the first road game. Then it's back to normal, because we play Texas. And so then at that point, it's just smooth sailing in our mind.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Those first three games are super tricky, though. When you look at Tennessee, Auburn, and then obviously the Red River rivalry when you guys play Texas. There's a bye week, I think, between Auburn and Texas,
there
right?
is.
Yeah. So, but, what's the realistic expectation record-wise if you're Oklahoma going into those?
With the production that we're bringing back, we bring back 86% of our production on the defensive side of the ball.
Okay.
Brent Venables is a defensive coach. This is the first time that he's had guys in his scheme for 3 years. Because of that, the anticipation is Oklahoma should be undefeated going against Texas. There's nothing against Tennessee, nothing against Auburn. We're bringing back more bodies that are accustomed to what Brent Venables does.
Yeah.
And SEC is infamous for having defenses lead the way. And so for us, if we do that exact same thing, we should be able to go into the Texas game undefeated.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy take at all. I go back and forth on who I'm going to pick in Auburn and Oklahoma, because to me, the two most important games on Auburn's schedule, outside of the emotion of like the rivalries, Alabama and Georgia, those are always going to be important. But as far as Auburn wanting to overachieve this year, to me, it's Oklahoma and Texas A&M at home, because I think both of those are winnable games. I just do at home.
Yes.
I think Auburn beats Texas A&M. That one's happening towards the end of the year. The Oklahoma one, to me, I just go back and forth on it. Right now, if I had to pick it today, I would pick Oklahoma. But I've woken up some mornings thinking Auburn is going to beat Oklahoma. So I'm going back and forth on it. But to me, it's just such an important game. Auburn should be coming off, a strong 4-0 start, similar to Oklahoma. They'll, in theory, had beaten Arkansas the week before. And it's just when Auburn fans, that fan base starts to believe in its team, it just gets crazy and weird things happen, man.
Oh, no, I agree. And the energy is passed down from the fans into the players. And they play like that. And so, it's not crazy for us both to come in there 4-0. It's not crazy for you all to show the establishment. I think the biggest thing with Auburn, I've been having the question is, what does that offense really look like with Peyton Thorne? What does it look like?
Sure.
How the landscape looks there? If things start to look really good, then of course it's going to be a dogfight. I think it's going to be an exciting game. That's where my questions are. But it's also Hugh Freeze's only second season. So for me, it's like, yeah, I have more confidence in Venables being his third year. He's now deeper into the the game. Hugh has SEC experience, so that's no concern. He's still redoing things at Auburn. And so if this is like the next portion of the rebuild, then if you, like I say, you overachieve, then heck yeah, let's go for it, right? I think that's where I still lean a little bit Oklahoma, only because that extra year to me and the extra year of guys in the system should help them out.
The chink in the armor for Oklahoma to me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, but the reconstruction of that offensive line, I mean, that's been a big storyline for Oklahoma this offseason, right?
Oh yeah, that's the conversation. Of course, we lost all 5 offensive linemen.
All 5.
4 got drafted. 1 of them transferred, and we had an injury. We lost like 3 more that was in the depth side of it, right? So we hit the portal hard. We brought in Branson Hickman, the center from SMU. He was a very highly graded guy off of PFF. Brought in Fabichi Uewu, who played for our offensive coordinator, Seth Luttrell, at North Texas. He's going to be a monster. Luckily, we bring back Jake Sexton, who actually has starting experience, but he injured himself at the Florida State game, like literally the first drive against Florida State in the bowl game. And so he came back and played the last 4 games of the season. And so, because came in for Tyler Guyton, who was prepping basically for the NFL. So Bill Beatonbow's got to do that again. Now, the good thing is we have Bill Beatonbow. That's the only reason why I'm not concerned. For those that don't know, he is the offensive line coach, and he put in 2 guys in the first round of the draft 2 years in a row. He's put both his left tackle and the right tackle drafted the last 2 years in a row. Creed Humphreys is his guy. That he is infamous for putting out some really good offensive linemen. So we are a little bit cautiously optimistic because we have him. Now, as long as he gets them gelling, the line should be fine.
To me, Auburn's defensive line versus Oklahoma's O-line, that's going to tell the story.
100%.
I know you mentioned the question marks about Peyton Thorne in the offense and obviously the returning starters for Oklahoma's defense, but to me, that's the matchup. Oklahoma's offensive line versus Auburn's defensive line that has a lot of veterans. They rebuilt that through the transfer portal as well. It's kind of a similar situation, honestly. That matchup to me is going to decide it all.
100% agree, and it's all about who gels first.
Who
looks the best.
It's so early. It's so early in the season.
I think that, and to me, if the Auburn game was later in the season, I'd probably be a lot less on the Oklahoma side, because at that point, I feel like the establishment will be there. But it's because it's so early. That's always where that question comes in the line. But I agree. It's going to be the O-line versus D-line.
Jay, how can people watching, how can they check out everything Oklahoma?
Find me Locked On Sooners on YouTube, as well as whatever podcasts are download and listen to.
Coming up, Auburn basketball, huge news regarding the schedule right here on Locked On Auburn. Darrell, we were already so excited about Auburn's non-conference schedule, but it just keeps getting better. There's a lot of rumblings about this, but Auburn made it official yesterday that they will be playing Purdue in Birmingham, of all places, part of a 2-year deal. Auburn will play in Indianapolis against Purdue in 2025. But you just look at what Auburn has built throughout this non-conference schedule. It's going to be able to compete with anybody's in all of college basketball.
Holy cow. Merry Christmas, right? In December, you've got Duke the first week of December, and now you've got Purdue on December 21st, all in the same month. Legacy Arena in Birmingham, like you said. There's some hinting at some other things that might drop in November, some really significant, another non-conference opponent. And if that happens, the argument could be made, Zach, that for about a 6-week stretch, you'll have seen 3 of the best non-conference basketball games that Auburn's ever played.
When you put it like that, I mean, I'm kind of shocked, because you're right. I'm thinking for a second. It's like, yeah, I think that's true. I think that's true. I mean, obviously the battle with Duke is going to be kind of the big headliner here, but Purdue, I mean, has there been anybody more steady in college basketball than Purdue over the last few seasons?
No, Matt Painter's done a great job. He's perennially in the top 2 or 3 of the Big Ten. You combine that with playing a team that's perennially in the top 2 or 3 in the ACC, and the month of December, this game with Purdue is so special, because anytime you get an opportunity to play a team traditionally you've never played.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Auburn played Duke in a tournament over out of the country or whatever, but this is special. You get to play a team from the Big Ten that you haven't faced off against. I know Eddie is gone and Zach Edey is gone, but still, it's a name all the way back to when Purdue had Gene Cady. It's a tradition-rich basketball school in the Big Ten, and that's what Auburn's playing. They're playing blue bloods of a particular conference, and I tell you, it just goes to show you the legitimacy and where Auburn's basketball has gotten to.
When you look at the makeup of this roster, double-digit seniors, an incredibly difficult, challenging, and exciting brand throughout your non-conference schedule. And then this version of the SEC, when it comes to basketball, it's the best it's ever been.
Yeah, that's a very underrated point. I think if you're going to play this kind of non-conference schedule and what we're preparing ourselves when the other team gets dropped, this is the year to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you have this many seniors on your roster and you're this deep, and you're this talented, do it now. You don't want to do this I wouldn't play this kind of schedule if you have a bunch of freshmen and sophomore that are talented but they're newbies. That would be tough. Auburn's doing the right thing by really ramping this schedule up with a roster that I think is conducive for that.
I hope they do it every year moving forward, because I think the rewards are obviously huge. If you go 2-3 in those, those 3 games that we're talking about, but even if you go 0-3, we've seen the NCAA tournament committee, we've seen them not really hold that against you, scheduling these big type of games and losing. They don't really drop you in the polls. They don't really drop you seeding wise. I don't really get the downside of this.
It's weird. Let's just tentatively say, let's say it's a team like Houston. Okay. That's the other team that's announced in November.
Sure.
And you go 1-2. You gain more from going 1-2 against those 3 teams in the NCAA selection committee eyes than you would going 3-0 against even Power 5 schools that are not at that level. It's just weird how they do it.
Right.
You get penalized more for sometimes winning against mid-majors than you do losing against top 10 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay because of the matrix and how they set everything up and the metrics in college basketball. But I think Auburn has a good chance to go in there and go 2-1 against these teams because of this roster. And if you do that, come March, when the selection committee rolls around, if Auburn takes care of business, it could move you up a seed line or 2 by scheduling these 3 games.
Yeah, and I think it sets up things in regards to recruiting, in regards to, you got to assume that Auburn will be very active in the transfer portal after the season with so many seniors. I think setting yourself up to say, hey, we're the kind of team that does this. You're going to be on TV. It's going to be prime time. These are going to be the big matchups when everybody's sitting at home in December with their family. They're going to be watching you. They're going to be watching you. I think setting that tone, if you're Bruce Pearl in this Auburn basketball program, I think it's going to go a long way when pitching, when you pitch yourself, when you pitch Auburn to the transfer portal guys that are going to be here. They're going to have to be. With so many guys leaving, you're going to have to get guys through the portal.
Not only that, Auburn's in on 2 high school players that are top 3 in the country.
Yeah.
One's a guard, one's a forward. And so while you're recruiting these kids, you say, look where we're going to play. And then if you come and sign with me as a freshman, you're going to go to Indianapolis on this return visit in December 20th and play at Purdue. We've just played Duke. Whoever, if it's a Houston and it's a home and home or whoever it is, that really, really is a great recruiting tool from a high school standpoint, even if it's a one and done kid.
Yeah.
And the transfer portal, very underrated point, Zach. I think, and Auburn's going to have to do that. They're going to have to clean house when we
the other option is you have 8 freshmen. And that's just not going to happen.
You can't do that.
Right.
And I know that there was a particular coach in SEC Media Days yesterday that talked about you don't want to use the portal in football for your needs. You want to top off the tank, which I thought was a great line.
Sure.
Brian Kelly used that. Sometimes, some years, you have to do it.
He also went and got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from the portal. Yeah. So I'm like,
easy to say that, right? Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
So I get it. It's at some point it becomes, when you know you've arrived at a program, whether it's football or basketball, it's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
But some years when you've got 9 seniors and they're all really, really good players like Auburn will have next year, you've got to recruit.
Yeah.
You've got to go transfer portal for needs.
No question. No question about it. Darrell, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
Follow me on DAP6410 on X and Darrell Dap on Instagram, and we're here all week. We'll be posting a lot of interesting content.
Yes, we are here all week. Please like the video. Please subscribe, and we will see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.